Hello again, we're talking about In the Earth, Ben Wheatley's new film that was made during the COVID pandemic. Now this is not going to be that long review, because I can't do spoilers because it's a new film, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to talk about the film a little bit, but this is probably one of the shortest videos of the week, because there's so much I want you should discover for yourself in this film. So I'm just going to cover little bits, the things you've seen in the trailer, really. And then let you vaguely describe other things without going into spoiler details to try and give you an idea of what the film is. So this is set during a pandemic that's taking place throughout the land, just like what we've been dealing with recently. But this is a much more insidious one. This seems to be something that happened after the COVID. It's people are still getting affected. They're going through all the kind of decontamination thing, the masks, everything else, and social distancing. And this details a scientist or a scientist assistant who's going to help another scientist who's out in the woods researching something to do with the fungi that would actually help people survive this new virus that's going around. So he's volunteered to go do it, even though it's the middle of the forest. There's very few luxuries there. So he has to walk to the location to start with, and then, so what he does is he travels to this outpost that's nearby, this kind of old like health centre, whatever, home it's used for rangers of the forest and begin first place, but now it's used also as a kind of decontamination centre for anyone who's going near the forest. And there's been complaints of lots of people going to the forest for some reason. So the story's kind of like Heart of Darkness, where they're going to go slowly but surely into the middle of the forest and going further and further away from civilization, and what lurks within the heart of a man. It's that kind of thing. It's a virus version of Heart of Darkness, the story. That's the general thing that's been sold on. That's the description you've heard from everyone. But it's also very much a science fiction film made by a guy who watched a lot of British science fiction. If you've seen British science fiction, which is much more downbeat, much darker, you'll know the kind of films that Ben Wheatley probably watched when he's grown up. There was influence this. Even though there's not a direct creator mass element, it's got the feel of Nigel Neal in here. There's a feel of like a lot of novels that looked into more paganistic elements of the British culture that has been overlooked by Christianity. So there's the sense of nature has been much more of a threat and not caring about mankind. So if you've seen A Field in England, the Ben Wheatley film, you'll kind of know what to expect, where it's a bit more experimental visually. It doesn't care so much about your expectations for it. It's going to do what it's going to do, and it's going to be a bit weird in a way that you find out. I do know that Ben Wheatley loves Zardoz and Boorman and stuff, and you can tell the influence in this film where he does not care about alienating people. But that doesn't matter because it is wonderful. Now the people in this journey are the ranger, the woman you see behind me, and the scientist, the guy you see behind me as well. The scientist guy is a kind of weakling of the group. He's used to civilization. He's used to his luxuries. You know, he's not spoiled or anything, but he's not used to the forest. He's out of his depth here, and it's that usual trope, but they don't overplay it. It's just like he's a normal guy who's not used to nature. That's it. It's just like he acts the way most of us would act in that situation, which is, I think I know what I'm doing, but there's probably a lot of stuff I don't really know, so I'll rely on the ranger to know what he's doing. She's very unsentimental, very no nonsense, pretty much to the rules, and she looks at him as if he's a bit of an outsider and a bit of a moron when it comes to nature, which he kind of is, but that's just normal. But they start walking and start talking, and then as they get further into the forest, they run into this abandoned campsite where people just seem to have disappeared. And then later on, as they're camping, they wake up to find some of the stuff's missing, like their shoes, and they have to start walking in bare feet as they try and make it through the landscape, and then they run into Reese Smith. Never a good sign in a horror movie if he's a guy that you run into. It's always a bad sign. And things get very dark after that. I mean, again, it's Heart of Darkness type of story, but also revenge of nature and the sense of nature being strange, and people within nature can be mad. So yeah, it's Reese Smith. You shouldn't trust him. And it leads to some dark moments. If you don't like seeing feet being brutalized, this is not the film for you, is the best way to put it. Because lead guy's feet, they receive some damage. It's quite brutal, and so the film doesn't shirk on the body horror elements of it. It's pretty out there, and it just pretty much does is like, yeah, this is what happens. Just deal with it. Just don't be a wimp. So that kind of attitude the Ranger has to stuff, the film seems to have at a certain point as well. But the film also goes further than that into kind of just the weird psychedelic elements and the pagan stuff of what do rocks and landscapes mean to your mind. How you kind of free associate into that kind of mental state. That is much more like paganism, and the film goes further into that idea as it progresses, which is what's wonderful about it. But it's also the thing that will make people not like it. I mean, it does go into craziness as it goes along. It really does. It really does try and show you some strange things, some dream sequences, some imagery that's almost floating from your subconscious into the conscious mind. There's fog, there's strange elements of science that seems to have gone a bit mad. And the further into the forest, the more lost they feel. This is just a kind of the ultimate forest is out to get you thing. I mean, people talked about Blair Witch Project years ago as if it was scary. It never scared me because I grew up near, nature, so it doesn't really bother me. Like I used to wander around with my pals up through various places in the summer holidays, and one thing pretty early on is if you find a river, just follow the river, you're fine. So this kind of stuff doesn't usually bother me, but the way it does here, it is very affecting and very, because it's not just you can go out mad if you don't know nature. This is much more nature's doesn't care, and there's lots of stuff within it that can mess you up, and there's elements within like paganism and old myths that can mess you up, and it's a sense of like an older world that you've never seen. That's a keystone of older horror stories of set in Britain that has been kind of ignored as they go towards a more American model of like serial killers and all that stuff, or taking the elements from Gothic that they like vampires and Frankenstein monsters, rather than revenge of nature and nature's cruel, and there's some stuff within the old world that can come and get you, which this film really is good at. Because it's not just one thing, it's an element of, is this science, is this nature, is this something else that's supernatural? Everything's on the table, and it's not going from one thing to the other. It's this sense of the unknown, of the elements of no one quite knows what they're dealing with, and everyone's got theories, and it's just wonderful that way, because it becomes something different from what it's set up to be, while still paying respect to what it's set up to be. So it is wonderful. That's why I'm trying to avoid getting into too much detail. It's like, I don't want to ruin the surprises, some of the surprises they've got, but it is a genuinely wonderful film. It is one of the best films I've seen this year. It's been released this year. This is top level stuff. This is really good. This is a film you should see. It's terrific. So I hope you enjoy this video. I hope I haven't spoiled anything, but go watch in there.